I fear not the dark itself, but what may lurk within it. Welcome to Lurk, bringing you creepy, strange, and bone-chilling stories, with your host, Jamie Jackson.
Hey lurkers, welcome to this week's episode of Lurk, where we venture into the twilight zones of the unknown, where mysteries linger like shadows and answers dissolve into the starlight. Buckle up, because tonight we're headed to the quiet forest of Duncan, British Columbia, for one of the most baffling and cosmic mysteries in modern history. The 1980 disappearance of Granger Taylor, a mechanical genius who claimed aliens summoned him for a galactic journey. So grab a flashlight, put on your tinfoil hat, and let's venture into the starry unknown. It's November 29, 1980, in Duncan, a small logging town on Vancouver Island, 60 kilometers north of Victoria. The air is thick with the scent of rain and pine, and a ferocious storm is brewing, with winds gusting up to 140 kilometers per hour. Granger Taylor, a 32-year-old mechanic, is at home with his parents, Jim and Grace Taylor, in their modest house on Semenos Road. Granger is a local legend, a quiet, unassuming man with a mind that could rebuild the impossible. He restored bulldozers, vintage cars, and even a World War II Kitty Hawk fighter plane that's now displayed at the British Columbia Aviation Museum. His backyard was a shrine to his passions, a cluttered workshop and a life-size flying saucer he welded from scrap metal, complete with a couch, stove, and TV, where he spent nights dreaming of the stars. That evening, Granger was calm but resolute. He told his parents he was heading out for a drive. He climbed into his pink 1974 Datsun pickup truck, its vibrant color a beacon in the storm, and drove into the night. He was never seen again. But first, before we get into those details, let's dive into Granger's world before that fateful night. He was born October 7th, 1948, Granger Ormond Taylor, and he grew up in Duncan, the eldest of 3 children in a working-class family. Granger's biological father died when he was just an infant. His father drowned in Horn Lake during a vacation at the family cabin. When Granger was 2 years old, his mother married widower Jim Taylor, who had children of his own. Granger spent his early years growing up with 7 siblings, 3 biological siblings, 3 step-siblings, and 1 half-brother. His father, Jim, was a logger, and his mother, Grace, a homemaker, who doted on all of the children. Granger was a shy, curious boy, often found tinkering with broken radios or bicycle parts in the family garage. Some called him withdrawn and socially awkward. By age 10, he was fixing lawnmowers for neighbors, earning pocket money and a reputation as a prodigy. School, however, wasn't his place. He struggled with reading and dropped out of the 8th grade. But his mechanical intuition was unmatched. A 1981 Vancouver Sun article quotes his sister Joanne Taylor saying, "Granger could look at a machine and know how it worked. He didn't need books." He worked as an apprentice auto mechanic for his neighbor, and after a year, Granger felt he had learned all he could and opened his own shop on his parents' property. He worked on unconventional projects, many of which he went on to sell to collectors or the provincial government for impressive sums of money. At the age of 14, he built a single-cylinder automobile. In his early 20s, he decided to resurrect a derelict steam locomotive he found resting in the forest. It had trees growing out of the chassis. It took Granger 2 years to restore it to full working order, and then he laid tracks for it through his parents' garden and took the neighborhood kids for rides. During this time, he was also restoring heavy machinery for local logging companies. But while his hands were stained with grease, his mind was always elsewhere, on the cosmos. Granger's fascination with UFOs began in his teens, sparked by a 1967 sighting reported in the Cowichan District Leader. A glowing orb was seen over Mount Prevost, a 600-meter peak near Duncan, and Granger, then 19, was captivated. He developed an interest in air travel, and he earned his pilot's license and began restoring a scrapped World War II fighter plane that he later sold to a collector for $20,000. Then, on Christmas Eve 1969, at around 5 a.m., 4 nurses at Cowichan District Hospital saw a silent, brilliantly lit flying saucer hovering outside the window about 3 stories off the ground, near the children's ward. Doreen Kendall, the first nurse to see the object, claimed to have seen 2 humanoid pilots standing in the craft's cockpit through its transparent window. The nurses gazed in amazement as it drifted behind a grove of trees before taking off like a shooting star. Later that morning and through the following night, citizens from all over Duncan and surrounding area, including a handful of elementary school teachers and a Royal Canadian Naval Air Service pilot, came forward with reports of a similar-looking UFO spotted throughout the region. For months, flying saucers were the talk of southwest Vancouver Island. Granger devoured books like The Flying Saucer Story by Brinsley Lepore Trench and joined the local UFO study group. Friends recall his infectious enthusiasm. He'd sketch spacecraft designs on napkins and debate whether aliens were benevolent or observing humanity like a cosmic experiment. Then his attention turned to the propulsion of UFOs, and in 1978 he began building a flying saucer. Aided by the neighborhood children and teens, Granger scavenged 2 radio tower satellite dishes from a dump and constructed a cylindrical building at the edge of his parents' garden. It was a 4-meter-wide structure of steel and aluminum, painted silver with portholes built on stilts. Granger outfitted his UFO with a cast-iron wood-burning stove, a couch, and a TV, and stocked it with sci-fi novels and books about UFOs. It wasn't functional, but it was his sanctuary. Robert Keller, a childhood friend of Granger's, told the Times Colonist in 2018, he'd sit in there with a beer, staring at the stars, like he was waiting for a signal. From 1979 to 80, Granger spent most of his time alone in his backyard UFO, studying flying saucers. Granger wasn't a complete loner, though, despite his quirks. He was close to his family, especially his sister Joanne, who was 10 years younger. She described him as a protective big brother who would fix her bike and tell her wild stories about space. He had a small circle of friends, mechanics, loggers, and fellow UFO enthusiasts, who admired his generosity. Linda Barron, a neighbor, told CBC's The Fifth Estate that Granger was the guy who would drop everything to help you, but he'd get this faraway look, talking about aliens like they were real. Romantically, Granger was private. There was a brief relationship with a woman named Susan, who was a server at a Dunkin' diner, but she ended things because he was more married to his machines. By 1980, Granger was living at home, pouring his energy into his workshop and saucer, his life a blend of grounded skill and celestial dreams. Granger's UFO obsession grew intense in 1980, when he claimed to receive telepathic messages from aliens. He said beings from beyond our solar system had introduced themselves telepathically. Months before, Granger had built a radio of sorts that he used to try to contact extraterrestrials, and he believed this is what prompted them to communicate with him. He went on to have several more telepathic conversations with aliens. He repeatedly asked the aliens questions about the propulsion source of their flying saucers, but all they said was that the secret had something to do with magnetism. And somewhere in my brain, there's another UFO story that details magnets as propulsion, but it eludes me at the moment. In October of 1980, Granger confided in two friends that aliens had invited him on a trip through the Milky Way galaxy. His friends figured he had just had a weird dream or some sort of hallucination, but they didn't completely discount it. If aliens talked to anyone, it would be Granger. Granger said the aliens would pick him up on a rainy night so the public wouldn't see their spaceship. And that brings us to November 29th, 1980. There was a storm that night that was brutal, one of the worst in Duncan's history. It was actually referred to as the storm of the century. There was thunder, lightning, torrential rain, and gale-force winds. Power lines were down, trees blocked roads, and the Cowichan River was swelling. Granger's behavior that evening was unusual, but not alarming. At 6 p.m., before the storm hit, Granger went to Bob's Grill to eat. The waitress noticed he was dressed in his usual attire of jeans, logging boots, and brown knitted sweater. He didn't have a coat, and he wasn't prepared for the coming weather. Grace Taylor, his mother, later told the Vancouver Sun in 1981, "He ate dinner with us, joked about the storm, and said he needed to clear his head." Around 8 p.m., he grabbed his jacket, kissed his mother goodbye, and he drove off. The next morning, Jim and Grace found a note taped to Granger's bedroom door, written in neat handwriting on graph paper. It read, "Dear Mother and Father, I have gone away to walk aboard an alien spaceship, as recurring dreams assured a 42-month interstellar voyage to explore the vast universe, then return. I am leaving behind all my possessions to you, as I will no longer require the use of any. Please use the instructions in my will as a guide to help. Love, Granger." On the back of the note was a hand-drawn map many have interpreted as a depiction of Mount Prevost trails, but it led searchers nowhere. The note's tone was chillingly matter-of-fact, as if Granger was announcing a trip to the store. The mention of a will puzzled his parents. Granger had no formal will, only a notebook with instructions for distributing his tools and saucer. The map was equally cryptic, with lines and symbols that some UFO buffs later claimed resembled a star chart, though the Royal Canadian Mounted Police dismissed this. Jim Taylor told the Cowichan district leader in 1981, "He believed in those aliens, but I thought it was just talk. That note, it broke our hearts." The family contacted the Royal Canadian Mounted Police that morning on November 30th, triggering a massive search. Volunteers, hampered by the storm's wreckage, scoured Mount Prevost, Cowichan Lake, and logging roads. Granger's pink Datsun, a standout in Duncan's sea of green and brown trucks, was nowhere to be found. His bank account, with $2,300, remained untouched. His workshop, saucer, and clothes were left as if he'd return at any moment. Robert Keller, his friend since childhood, spoke to the Times columnist. He said, "Granger was different that week. He was excited, like he'd cracked a code. He told me the aliens gave him a date, November 29th. I laughed it off, but he was dead serious. That saucer was his church." Keller also revealed Granger's experimentation with LSD, believing it opened his mind to cosmic signals. This detail, noted in a 1981 Royal Canadian Mounted Police report, suggests Granger may have been in an altered state. Linda Barron, the neighbor, said that she saw his truck on Highway 1 around 8:30 p.m., headed towards Mount Prevost. She said that the rain was so bad she thought he was crazy to be out. "I wish I'd stopped him," she said. Her sighting was uncorroborated, as visibility was near zero. Joanne Taylor, Granger's sister, offered a poignant perspective in a 1990 CBC interview. She said, "He was my hero. He'd build me toys, tell me we'd visit the stars someday. That note didn't sound like him. It was too cold. I think something scared him or someone made him write it." A lesser-known account comes from Michael Pratt, Duncan UFO enthusiast who met Granger at a 1980 meeting of the Vancouver Island UFO Research Group. In a 2018 blog post, Pratt wrote, "Granger showed us sketches of a ship, cylindrical, with blue lights. He said the aliens spoke in his head, promising to take him to Andromeda. I believed him. The night he vanished, I saw a bright light over Mount Prevost, but no one else reported it." Pratt's claim, while unverified, adds to the case's eerie aura. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, led by Sergeant Bill Chislett, faced a daunting task. The storm had erased tire tracks and footprints. They interviewed dozens of locals, checked Granger's haunts, gas stations, diners, and hiking trails, but found no leads. A Department of Highways worker reported clearing a fallen tree on Mount Prevost Road on November 30th, but saw no pink truck. By December 1980, the search scaled back, but volunteers persisted. Chislett told the Globe and Mail in 1981, "We believe Granger perished in the storm, maybe a landslide or flood, but without the truck we can't be sure." The case went cold, leaving Duncan abuzz with rumors. Some called Granger a visionary, others a troubled soul lost to delusion. On June 29, 1983, the date Granger Taylor should have returned from his interstellar trip, his stepbrother, a member of the Canadian Coast Guard, sat out half the night on the deck of his patrol boat, watching the sky. A breakthrough, or a red herring, came in April of 1986. Loggers on Mount Sicker, 20 kilometers from Duncan, found a small blast site, rusted charred metal fragments, rubber tires, and traces of dynamite. Granger had access to dynamite from his work restoring logging equipment, and the debris matched the pickup truck's components. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police speculated Granger rigged an explosion, perhaps to destroy his truck, and vanish or end his life. Forensic tests, limited by 1980s technology, confirmed that it was his Datsun. During the RCMP investigation, 2 shards of human bone were found not far from the crater. They believed that they were Granger Taylor's remains. Grace Taylor, his mother, said, "That's not my Granger. He loved that truck. Why blow it up?" Many believed Granger blew up his truck either on purpose or accidentally. His closest friend was adamant that Granger wasn't suicidal. I also read some information that said the truck parts found were to a blue Datsun, not a pink one. The Mount Sicker find deepened the mystery, suggesting intent but offering no closure. As far as Granger's state of mind at the time of his disappearance, his UFO obsession wasn't fringe in 1980. The decade was a golden age for UFO culture. Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T. fueled imaginations, and books like Communion by Whitley Strieber popularized abductions. Vancouver Island was a UFO hotspot. John Schuessler's UFO casebook documents 15 sightings in British Columbia in 1980, including a cattle mutilation near Duncan in October. Granger's LSD use, confirmed by Keller, aligns with counterculture trends. Many believed psychedelics unlock spiritual or extraterrestrial realms. A 1981 RCMP psychological profile, cited in a Cowichan District Leader article, suggested Granger might have had undiagnosed schizophrenia, with the alien messages as hallucinations. Yet his mechanical precision and social warmth argue against severe mental illness. Was he a visionary, a victim of his own mind, or something else? Now, the theories, each a piece of this cosmic puzzle. The first theory is, of course, alien abduction. Granger's note, his telepathic claims, and the absence of his truck mark this as a fan favorite theory. One person commented, "It's like he was plucked from Earth. No truck, no body. Where did he go?" Online sleuth stated, "Granger's case screams abduction. Mount Prevost is a known hotspot." Skeptics counter that no physical evidence, like radiation, supports this. The second theory is accidental death. The storm's ferocity could have swept Granger's truck into a river or ravine. The Mount Sicker debris suggests an explosion, possibly from mishandling dynamite. But the lack of identified remains and the note's intent challenge this. Another possibility is suicide or staged disappearance. The dynamite debris and Granger's LSD use point to a possible mental health crisis. He may have destroyed his truck to end his life or fake his death. The note's clarity suggests planning, but his family insists he was content. Joanne Taylor told CBC in 1990 he wasn't depressed, he was excited about the future. Could he have started over elsewhere? His untouched bank account and lack of sightings make this unlikely. Of course, there is also the theory of foul play. Duncan had a small drug scene in 1980, and Granger's dynamite access could have entangled him with unsavory characters. A 1981 Globe and Mail rumor mentioned a dispute with a local dealer, but the Royal Canadian Mounted Police found no evidence. His gentle nature makes this theory tenuous at best. The last theory is a paranormal wilderness phenomenon. Some speculate there was a portal of some kind or supernatural force. Vancouver Island's UFO lore runs deep. A 1967 sighting over Mount Prevost involved 3 witnesses seeing a disc-shaped craft with red lights. In 1980, a farmer near Duncan reported mutilated cattle and blamed the aliens. Granger's case also reflects the era's zeitgeist, post-Watergate distrust, economic struggles, and a yearning for cosmic answers. His flying saucer, now a Duncan landmark, draws tourists and UFO hunters. The investigation's flaws add another layer. The RCMP's initial search was thorough, but limited by the storm and the 1980s technology. No GPS, no drones. Sergeant Chislett's team lacked forensic tools to analyze the Mount Sicker debris fully. The psychological profile labeling Granger as potentially schizophrenic felt dismissive to his family, who insisted that he was stable. Granger Taylor told the Vancouver Sun in 1987, "They didn't know my son. He wasn't crazy, he was curious." A 2020 petition by Duncan residents to reopen the case, citing advances in ground-penetrating radar, was denied by the RCMP due to insufficient new evidence. The human toll was profound. Jim and Grace Taylor searched tirelessly, posting flyers and hiking Mount Prevost until their deaths in 2001 and 2004. Joanne Taylor, now in her 60s, said, "I dream he's out there, flying among the stars, but I wake up crying." The community remembers Granger fondly. His saucer, restored in 2015, is a roadside attraction with a plaque, "Granger Taylor, Dreamer of the Cosmos." In 2024, an online board had a comment that read, "Granger's note feels like a goodbye, but to who? Aliens or us?" His promised return never came, leaving a void filled with speculation. Before we close, I want to hear from you, our listeners. Do you believe Granger Taylor was taken by aliens, lost to the storm, or living a new life? Have you encountered strange lights over Vancouver Island, or heard of similar vanishings? Visit lurkpodcast.com or connect with us on social media to share your thoughts. If you have tips, contact the Duncan RCMP. Stars may hold Granger's secret, or the forests of Mount Prevost. Either way, let's keep searching for the truth, because anyone who has seen one episode of The X-Files knows the truth is out there. That's all for this episode of Lurk. If Granger Taylor's cosmic journey has you gazing skyward, head to our website, lurkpodcast.com, for other mysteries that blur the line between reality and the unknown. You'll find links to our social media. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook to join the conversation and share your theories. Explore our blog for exclusive content, like chilling stories we couldn't fit here. Sign up for our newsletter on lurkpodcast.com to stay updated with new episodes, special announcements, and a peek at what's lurking next. If this episode resonated, please rate and review us on your favorite platform. It helps us reach more curious souls like yourself. Next week, we'll unravel another mystery that'll haunt your nights. Stay vigilant, stay curious, and until next time, keep lurking.